welcome to another episode of Discovering Justice. Please visit our page at www.discoveringjustice.net for information about this program and any other programs that we will have in the future. My name is Rivera, and I'm the host of this program, and I could be reached at 617-266-6001. Today, we have a very special guest. We have Senator Moore from the 2nd Suffolk District. Senator Moore is the chair of the Higher Education Committee, and he is the vice chair of Homeland Security and Public Safety. He's also a committee member of the Senate Ways and Means. Senator Moore, thank you for coming to our program.
Oh, thank you for having me on the show today.
Yes, so Senator Moore, you're coming from the 2nd Worcester District. What's your district all about?
Well, I represent half the city of Worcester, which would be the southern half, and then there's 6 communities that border the city of Worcester, the towns of Leicester, Auburn, Millbury, Grafton, Shrewsbury, and Upton. So I've got it's a pretty diverse area. I've got one section of the city that has a lot of issues that you'll be dealing with in Boston, Lowell, some of the other urban areas. And then I've got some communities, like this, the community of Upton, which roughly has about 6,000 people. So it's diverse in the issues, and it's been interesting. It's been a pleasure. I'm starting my 2nd term, and I've enjoyed it quite a bit.
Congratulations, Senator
Moore. Thank you.
And congratulations on your recent appointment for chair of the Senate Higher Education Committee.
Oh, thank you. I'm looking forward to it. It should be a lot of fun this year.
So tell us about the challenge of this new appointment and the opportunities.
Well, actually, coming from central Massachusetts, we actually have 13 colleges and universities just in Worcester and the surrounding communities, ranging from UMass Medical School to Worcester Polytechnical Institute, which is an engineering school. We have Holy Cross, Clark University, and if you look in Massachusetts, we have approximately about 130 colleges and universities, that's public and private. There's roughly 30 public institutions. So we've got the majority of institutions in Massachusetts are the private schools. And I think, as we all know right now, with what the government is going through, the same thing our students are going through. There's the cost of education. That's from the community colleges to public and private schools. It's trying to find ways to increase accessibility at a reasonable cost, and at the same time trying to provide the students with the skills and the knowledge so that they can graduate and be competitive in the economy today. And that's really, I think, isn't that what government's supposed to be for? We're supposed to provide this to our citizens.
Yes, exactly. And I agree, and I see that this proposal will change the status of colleges to universities. They'll be now called universities.
Yes, we've got last year, the legislature passed, and the governor signed it, legislation allowing these state colleges to upgrade themselves to universities, which will now allow them to add more curriculum to their courses, and also makes them more competitive with the private universities and out-of-state universities. Hopefully we'll be able to retain more students here in Massachusetts, and obviously hopefully attract more people from out of state to increase the quality of the education, the quality of the student and the education that we're delivering.
And that's the objective. That would be the goal of making it a state, to kind of upgrade it to university level.
Yes.
And it's mostly retention?
Retention, well, retention and attraction. We have to make, if you look at the economy today, we've got a global economy.
Yes.
And if we want to attract the brightest and the best students, we've got to make our colleges and universities competitive.
Yes.
And this is one way that we can do that, by allowing them to increase their standards. And if you've got a student that could go to a state college, and this is not a knock against the state college, but a state college or a university, I think most students would try to go to the university because it has a higher status and a better, when you're graduating, probably a better reputation, so that allows you to get a better career down the road. So I think that's definitely one positive step that we did make. If you look at the economy right now, especially in Massachusetts, this is one of our major economic employment sectors. In the last 2 years, the education sector or field has been one of our largest job producers. So a lot of people don't associate the education, higher ed, with the economy and the effects of that. But we're a very high-tech based economy here in Massachusetts,
right.
from life sciences to medical. We got a new law school. There's talk now of also looking at trying to create a pharmaceutical program in some of the state colleges or state universities. So we really have to make a concerted effort on trying to offer the programs that's going to keep our students here and provide them an avenue for employment upon graduating.
So this is the second highest source of revenue for the state, education.
Well, it's one job growth areas.
Oh, very good.
It's one of the job growth areas. And if you looking at the students graduating from these state colleges and universities, this again goes to the affordability of the schools. They're graduating with enormous amounts of debt.
Right.
So we've got to try to find ways to, again, to entice them to stay here, make it affordable, but we've also got to establish partnerships. There's one program that Worcester State University and the Massachusetts College of Pharmacy just initiated in the city of Worcester, where you can graduate with dual degrees, a public health degree and a degree from the College of Pharmacy. So
better prepared
professionals at a reduced cost, which again is only going to help them when they graduate, that they're not paying off an extreme debt from receiving that college education.
Very interesting, and that's a great initiative. And I think there's a lot of opportunity in the Senate as a senator of this big district, as you mentioned. You also indicated that there is a bill that you co-signing or are co-sponsoring with the Attorney General's Office in Human Trafficking. Are you the co-sponsor?
Well, I'm one of the co-sponsors.
Yes.
I'm one of several co-sponsors.
Right.
The Attorney General and actually Senator Mark Montague are the main sponsors of it, but there are several of us who are co-sponsoring the legislation, and it's a human trafficking piece of legislation.
And as far as this legislation, is there one already in Massachusetts?
No, actually, Massachusetts is one of 5 states, of only 5 states, that does not have a human trafficking law. And what the bill does do is create 3 categories that we're trying to address, which is supply, demand, and victim services. That's what the human trafficking legislation does. It's one of
So yeah, so this is really interesting. So supply and demand, in that term, the Attorney General is the one who's trying to get support for this bill. But what would this bill address? What would be the penalties and how the implementation? And it's just a bill right now.
Well, it's just a piece of legislation. Actually, the state Senate did pass this legislation in the previous session.
Oh, okay.
And honestly, I'm not sure whether it was the House or the governor's office where it died, but we did pass it back last year. So this is a renewed effort trying to get this passed. Again, we're only one of 5 states that doesn't have anything on the books protecting people from this. And this covers, it's immigrants. It protects people, low-income people, people coming here that need protection from people that are going to abuse them.
Right.
It mandates anyone who's put into sexual servitude, a jail sentence of up to 20 years. Regarding anyone who's put into labor, some sort of labor or working situation where it's considered some sort of servitude, it would be up to 15 years in jail. And anyone under the age of 18, it could be sexual or the sexual servitude or labor. It could could be a sentence of any term of incarceration up to life in prison. And it also establishes an interagency task force. And the Attorney General's office would be obviously being the chief law enforcement agency. And the Commonwealth would be one of the main enforcers of this legislation.
And that's the trafficking law that it's right now a bill.
Yes.
And the Senate is actually trying to make it push it so it becomes the law in Massachusetts, and we currently don't have one. But you also mentioned that. What about the men who are soliciting, or the men who? Is there any provision for the people who consume this, sort of speaking, this kind of
Yes, the people soliciting the activity.
Yes.
The Johns.
Yes, the Johns.
There are penalties to strengthening the laws regarding Johns or people soliciting sexual activity.
Good. Senator Moore, I recently I wanted to talk to you about the homestead law also, which is something you helped or facilitated become law, the new modern.
Well, I've supported the legislation was passed.
What is the homestead law as it passed?
Well, basically it deals with anyone who owns a piece of property, whether it be a condominium or your primary residence. It's your homestead is your primary residence that you would have to declare. And this legislation actually reformed the current homestead law, where now if you have up to $125,000 in equity in your property, it protects you against creditors and possible civil litigation pertaining to that property. And it also allows you to increase the level of protection, protecting your primary residence. And again, homestead would be your primary residence.
Yes.
So
in this prospect right now, if you have equity of 150, you
125,000.
125,000. With this new law that actually passed,
yes,
would you said that it could be up to 500.
I think it's $500,000. Yes, I think you could adjust the protection limit up to $500,000. So
of your that's significant and that's important.
Well, it is. I mean, if you've worked hard your entire life to make this investment in your home, I think people should have some protections against the property being taken away. So I think it was a good piece of legislation. I think it's a good consumer piece. It's a good homeowner piece or community piece. So I'm hoping it will benefit people. A lot of people will benefit from this.
Yes, it protects the elderly, and so long as it's your primary residence, so people in the audience can now be beneficiaries to this new homestead law as it has been passed, where so long as you have $125,000 in equity in your home, you could apply for protections of up to $500,000, and that's important given the economy these days.
And it's my understanding too. I don't think that you have to go to the registry of deeds and make any adjustments. A lot of people already have the homestead declaration on their property. You know, with the passage of this, you do not have to go to the registry of deeds and make any adjustments to the declaration. This is something that should just take place. And
that's really helpful, and then you don't have to make any additional paperwork. So,
although property attorneys would probably much rather have us go
through them. But so our viewers are watching us at Discovering Justice. Our guest today is Senator Moore from the 2nd Worcester District. And if you like to see more information about this program or any other programs, please go to our page, www.discoveringjustice.net. And I am your host, Lucy Rivera. And Senator Moore, it's really interesting what we're talking about right now. He's the chair of higher education, public education in the Senate here in the state of Massachusetts. So, Senator Moore, there is this new law that is coming to legislation. Well, there is a proposal for a bill regarding people who drink and drive, and it's called the Melissa's law.
It's not just drinking and driving. It's almost like a 3 strikes you're out type piece of legislation.
Yes.
And again, and I am one of several co-sponsors on this bill. I think Rep. Hill is the actual sponsor of it. But there is a tie into this legislation to releasing what happened with the situation with the parole board and the release of the individual who was incarcerated on 3 life sentences and who was out on parole. Basically, with this legislation, and again, I'm a co-sponsor on this. I agree with most of the principles of it, but there are some aspects of the law that I would like to see adjusted during the legislative process. Basically, what this law would do is if you have 2 convictions, and that could be from within Massachusetts, 2 felony convictions of 3 years or over from within Massachusetts, or from 1 state and 1 in Massachusetts, or a federal conviction and a state conviction. Upon your 3rd conviction, you could be deemed a habitual offender, which at that point you would then serve the maximum penalty. Now, one of the issues I have with this is the third offense. It's just 3 felonies. Now, being a public defender, as you know, a felony could be larceny over $250.
Right.
So if I have 3 convictions of larceny over $250, which is a felony, should I actually have to spend life in jail or 20 years in jail? I think there's got to be some adjustment to that aspect of this bill, where my signing on to this, dealing with situations which took place with the individuals on parole, deals with more the violent criminal, the violent crime. I don't think I think there's over 200.
So as you would like to see it, first it'll consider any other sort of violation for driving under the influence, not only Massachusetts, but even anywhere else.
Well, it's going to be, but as long as they're felony convictions, they've got to be felony, not misdemeanors. So as long as they're felony convictions, then they would fall into
the Melissa's law.
Right.
And it would consider felony convictions regarding this offense, even if they're in other states as well, to count towards
Yes.
the Massachusetts
Right.
Melissa's law new bill
Right,
for
yes.
penalty purposes. So what would you like, how is it proposed right now? What would you like this law to be like in order for you to fully support it?
I would like the non-violent offenses, felony offenses, to be taken out of it, because the law also prohibits parole, probation, the issuance of good time. So, the intent of this is so that we're providing public safety for the citizens in Massachusetts, and if you've got individuals who are in there on minor drug offenses or issues that are felonies, but they're not.
Simple possessions, for instance, or
yes,
you're
or
under the influence for like a
well, or a theft, or a felony theft, or something where there's no violence involved. I don't think this law, in my opinion, I'm not signing on this. That's not the intent of me signing this for this law. This is really dealing with the situation of a violent offender being released from prison when he shouldn't be.
And what do you see the prospects of this law are? Like, is it going to get support?
I think, well, I don't know how much support it will get. I think it will be hotly debated this year because of what did take place. So I think this will be an issue that will be debated. There's other pieces of legislation that are similar to this. There was also another piece of legislation that was filed dealing with the parole board and the appointment process and the qualifications of individuals who can be appointed to the parole board. That also, again, has some aspects of the Melissa law in it, and again, that also contains the 3 felony convictions.
Oh, what's the relationship of that?
Well, it's just that again, it encompasses the 3 strikes you're out aspect, where your third offense, you could be deemed a habitual offender, which then would guarantee a higher sentencing or incarceration in jail. And again, it doesn't differentiate between the nonviolent and the violent crimes.
And suppose that unfortunately this will be deemed as a felony and would you still be co-sponsoring this
Well,
bill?
I guess I'll always be considered a co-sponsor. The question is that I don't know whether in the long run, I'll vote for it if it goes beyond the violent offenses. If we can reword the language so that we take the non-violent offenses out of that section, then I'd support the legislation. But there's 5,000 pieces of legislation filed every year. 99%, or maybe all 100% of the legislation that's filed, that's when it's filed, it's very seldom it's passed as written. So a lot of times, many times when you're sponsoring a legislation, it's the concept that you're agreeing with, and you know during the process, the language or the verbiage of the bill can be changed, hopefully correcting it. So that's why you may have people originally co-sponsoring a piece of legislation, but when it comes time to the actually making a vote, a co-sponsor may not actually vote for the piece of legislation.
Interesting. There could be bundled there could be other bills or other benefits or other pieces that can be added to that bill that you necessarily don't agree with, for instance.
Yes,
And then,
right. Yeah, just like I'm trying, I like to see it adjusted where the non-violent crimes are taken out. There may be legislators who want to keep those crimes within the statute. So again, it's all, and that's where the compromise comes in. You could, when you're filing a piece of legislation, it's easy to say that you're going to be adamant on this, on all these aspects of the bill, but in most instances, you've got to have some sort of compromise for the legislation to make it through the entire process, and that's the Senate, the House, and having the governor sign it. Because every branch it's intricate on getting support of every branch. You can have bills go through the House and Senate, and the governor vetoes it.
so it looks like Melissa's law has a long way to go then.
Yes, it does. Yeah, still a long way to go.
A long way to go. As the chair of the Senate Public Higher Education Committee,
Yes.
there is some aspect of this that it deals with the police and an incident about what happened in Worcester. I'm referring to the IDs, the impersonation of IDs and taking out. What can you comment about that? First, tell us what happened in Worcester.
Well, there was an incident recently where there were individuals who were impersonating police officers that actually broke into someone's house, and they didn't hurt the individuals, but they ended up robbing their belongings. What we passed last year in the legislature was a piece of legislation that it's with the aid of federal Homeland Security money that we are going to create a standardized police identification. It protects the safety of the public. Just think if you're out in the city of Worcester late at night, you get pulled over by someone, or someone stops you and claims they're a police officer. You being from this area, you're not going to, right now there's no standard ID. A police officer from Boston, Worcester, Springfield, they all have different ID formats. So you're not going to know if that's really a valid identification. So what this legislation does is it standardizes it. It's going to be a high-tech digital police ID. It's the roughly cost about $9.50 per ID, but it's going to be paid for with the use of the federal Homeland Security money. And the Registrar of Motor Vehicles is the overseeing agency that's going to determine who actually will get the IDs, who won't get, the local police, state police, who will get these identification cards. But it should provide a level of more security and safety for the public.
Okay, that sounds really interesting. I think it's incredible how this happened in Worcester about the impersonation, and this issue will address. I mean, this ID standardization will address these issues of impersonification that apparently are pretty common.
Again, if you think about it, everyone's familiar with their local police force, the individuals or the identifications. But if you're in another area, someone could easily reproduce a identification badge or card, and you're not going to know. So at least now having something through the state public safety agency, hopefully it will add some level of security or safety.
Yeah, let us know when that comes out. Hopefully it'll be pretty advertised everywhere, so people could just ask them for that ID and recognizable and standardized.
Well, it's actually a good idea to have some sort of public awareness, maybe through the public access stations, to let people know.
Good idea. Well, Senator Moore, we're coming towards the end of our program, and I just wanted to thank you for coming here today.
Well, thank you for having me on here.
Thank you so much. And for our viewers, today we had Senator Moore, who is the senator of the 2nd Worcester District, and he is doing great work for everybody here in Massachusetts, and we thank you deeply for coming here.
Thank you.
And to all of you, our viewers, this program is called Discovering Justice. It's public access TV program that reaches out to educate everybody as to the issues that are important in our state these days. My name is Lucy Rivera, and I am the host of this program. And please find us at our page, www.discoveringjustice.net, or you can email me at lucindarivera@discoveringjustice.net. And call our program also if you have any questions. If you'd like to hear about anything in particular, call us at 617-266-6001. And thank you all for watching this program today, and we look forward to seeing you next time. Thank you, Senator Moore.
Thank you.